How worried should the Americans be proximately in the near term, in other words, after the next election, about the quote-unquote end of democracy in the U.S.?
Well, I think they should be very, very worried. And this is not reading tea leaves. If you listen carefully to what Donald Trump, the presumptive Republican candidate in 2024, has been saying, he's been pretty explicit. He wants to pull a Bukele-type move. He was saying the way you deal with shoplifters is you just shoot them dead as they come out of the store, right? No due process.
Very simply, if you rob a store, you can fully expect to be shot as you are leaving that store. Shot.
He has explicitly said that he wants to turn the Justice Department against his personal enemies, not just the so-called Biden crime family, but all of the people in his own first administration that have criticized him and turned against him. The other thing that's quite worrisome is that he was limited in what he could do in his first term by, incompetence, unfamiliarity with the way government worked. He didn't come in with a big cadre of loyalists to help him. And so for the first 3 years, he really had to rely on the advice of so-called normie Republicans. This time around, they are busy compiling lists of people whose primary qualification is going to be loyalty to the Trump agenda, and they want to hit the ground running in terms of accomplishing things that they couldn't accomplish. So it's not just the border wall, but increasing the weaponization of the Justice Department. They want to clear out the civil service and be able to fire tens of thousands of ordinary civil servants and replace them with people that will listen to the president and not to the Constitution or to the rule of law. And so I think that, this is really what's happened in other countries that have slipped into dictatorship. The problem is that I think a lot of people on the left have been crying wolf for a long time. And so they have accused many Republicans over the years, people like Mitt Romney, who now looks like a saint for his willingness to criticize Trump. I mean, all of these Republicans made mistakes, and they had policy differences that were quite serious with people on the left, but they were never threats to democratic institutions, in themselves. And I think that's really the choice that we're going to face in the upcoming presidential election. But the other thing that is very, very worrisome is that, in a way, Trump is preparing for this moment when there's massive protests, and he's got a lot of supporters. Many of them are armed, and I think that on January 6th, he showed that he was, completely comfortable with calling on his friends to use violence to, support his ends. And so he might be able to get, police and military to help him out this time, and he may use his own armed supporters. And that really sets up, a scenario for serious violence. It is kind of remarkable that we have had a lot of threats of violence in the last, several years, but we've not actually seen assassinations or, overt, gun battles between different armed groups. But that's something that, we may unfortunately see down the road in the United States if things keep going in this direction. So I'm really, very worried about the guardrails and whether they're really going to be in place next year when we really need them.
I mean, to what extent is the problem that the United States hasn't really faced an internal crisis? I mean, January 6th at the end of the day, right? I mean, it looked horrible, but that evening, majority Republicans in the House could go back in and vote to refuse to certify the election because they were complacent, because they said, well, there's no real threat to the democracy.
Well, look, ever since 2016, we have imagined that there are all these red lines that once they're crossed, that certainly Trump's, supporters will start deserting him because they'll realize this time he really has gone too far. And that moment has just never arrived. And January 6th is the clearest example of that. I spent the whole day glued to, my computer screen watching those events. And I said, to myself, this is it. They can't possibly continue to support them. And yet, here we are 3 years later, and they're all busy trying to normalize what happened on that day. So I'm really, very worried about the guardrails and whether they're really going to be in place when we really need them.